Good morning. We were asked to do one opening song with the congregation. So if you'll pull out the hymnals that are in the pews and turn to number 432, Shall We Gather at the River, we're going to sing the first and the fourth verse. Please sing along with us. Shall we gather at the river, where bright angel feet have trod, with its crystal tide forever flowing by the throne of God? Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Fourth verse. Soon we'll reach the shining river. Soon our pilgrimage will cease. Soon our happy hearts will quiver with the melody of peace. Yes, we'll gather at the river, the beautiful river. Gather with the saints at the river that flows by the throne of God. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Lauren. I'm Grace's granddaughter. I'm going to read a couple verses. The first one is Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to his purpose. And then 2 Timothy 4:7-8 reads, I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Now there is in store for me the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have longed for his appearing.
Good morning. Thank you for coming. I am the grandson of, the youngest child of Grace. Jarrett Ask is my name. I'm going to read the call and response prayer. This is 1 Corinthians 15:51 through 57. Is it going to be up there? Yeah. Perfect. All right. So behold, I tell you a mystery. We shall not all fall asleep, but we will all be changed in an instant, in the blink of an eye, at the last trumpet. Oh, sounds. The dead will be raised incorruptible, and we shall be changed. So my turn. For that which is corruptible must clothe itself with incorruptibility, and that which is mortal must clothe itself with immortality. And when this which is corruptible clothes itself with incorruptibility, and this which is mortal clothes itself with immortality, then the word that is written shall come about. Death is swallowed up in victory. Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? The sting of death is sin, and the power of sin is the law. But all thanks be to God, who gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you.
still know His voice who ruled them while He was below. Be still, my soul, the hour is hastening on, when we shall be forever with the Lord, when disappointment, grief, and fear are gone. Sorrow forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and tears are past. All safe and blessed, we shall meet at last.
Hello. I'm reading Mother's Life Sketch. Grace was born on Long Island on November 7, 1925, to Armenian parents who immigrated from Turkey in 1923 through Ellis Island. She moved to Los Angeles in 1930 with her parents and brother Gregory to be closer to Esther Appigian, her mother's sister. Grace walked to school each day with her first cousins, Anne and Talk. From a young age, she helped her family by washing pots and pans each evening while her mom made food to be sold at offices and bus stops in downtown LA. The family eventually moved to San Francisco, where her dad opened a shoe repair shop. Grace always wanted to play the piano from a young age, persistently begging her mother, who finally succumbed and surprised Grace with the piano, much to her delight. Grace attended the College of the Pacific in Stockton, earning an associate's degree in music. While there, she became friends with Al and Margaret Heinz at the Stockton Central SDA Church and maintained this friendship. She married Myron Ask Sr. in 1948, settling in the town of Hollister, while her parents, Sophie and Saran, lived in the nearby town of Gilroy. She was a county clerk and taught piano lessons for a living. They had 3 children, Mickey, Gail, and Ron. Always tenaciously planning the future for her children after separating from mine at the age of 30. She enrolled in stenography school in San Francisco while her parents agreed to raise the children. She visited them faithfully every weekend for 2 years until she was unable to have them join her in San Francisco for the 3rd year. Upon completing school, she moved the family to Stockton, having landed a co-reporting job with the California Industrial Accident Commission, where she worked until her retirement 27 years later. Grace was always the loving mother and hard worker. As a single parent with 3 children, she bought a 4-bedroom home, insisted on private SDA education, and never taking assistance. She insisted on budgets, lists of chores, piano lessons, pathfinders, and attending church. Grace remarried at the age of 57 to Al Heinz, whose wife had died with lymphoma and had told him when she knew of her prognosis, "When I die, go to Grace, as she will take good care of you. Grace was able to enjoy 7 years with Al until his death from Lou Gehrig's disease. During this time, they both enjoyed traveling to various and distant lands, which she did for many years afterwards. Throughout her life, she enjoyed playing the piano and accompanying numerous performers in the church. In her 80s, she bought an 88-key Korg electronic keyboard, taking lessons on how to lay down tracks, and organized the singing group, The Joyful Sounds, who she accompanied at various churches and recorded music with. Grace was active through her 90s, both physically and mentally. She kept her mind sharp with music and games and would regularly tricycle for coffee with friends. She went jet skiing at age 91, planked at the age 92, ziplined at age 94, and reluctantly stopped driving at 95. She has been blessed with 3 children, 4 grandchildren, 7 great-grandchildren, and many, many close friends.
So let's see. Grace was born in Long Island to, okay, so, sorry. The eulogy. So we're just going to be ourselves up here. So, what constitutes a life well lived, a fulfilled life? What commends itself to others, commands their respect, commits themselves to others' memories? I'd like to explore that together with you in relationship to Grace, our mom, our grandmother, and our friend. First of all, let's be clear, this is not the final end to her life. She's asleep. She will awaken in a resurrection, as will all of us. And we need not worry unduly about our final end. We will end up exactly where we would be most comfortable. If we enjoy being where there is unselfishness, cooperation, collaboration, self-sacrificing love, and where we do not receive credit or reward for our good behaviors, if we are okay with not having to have the last word, not harboring grudges or resentments, or being sensitive to slights and barbs, not insisting on being treated fairly, not trusting in things and stuff, but in love, then that will continue. If we're restless and uncomfortable with all that, then we won't be forced to be in that environment. I remember the day we first met. I was being held up for all to see my nakedness. I heard snide comments about my appearance, my weight, my features. They hit me disrespectfully for no reason to see how I'd respond. And finally, she was the only one who accepted me with open arms. I looked up to her then and since, except for my teenage years, but those don't count. Actually, it took me until my 40s to begin seeing things through her eyes, and I'm sorry that this took so long for me to be able to do. She grew up in an era where people didn't have the time nor luxury of studying one's feelings, as that would distract you from doing what was necessary to survive. I don't recall any laments about her lot in life. You guys, any complaints about that she made about her lot? Except her coworkers. So she just did what was necessary, washing pots and pans, like we mentioned, during the Depression, learning to drive a stick shift on the steep hills of San Francisco. So try that sometime. Enduring the death of her older brother at age 28 from Hodgkin's lymphoma. So she looked up to him, and that was a big blow. Being raised by a grieving mother, so it was really hard on her mom, and I'm sure that colored her ability to show affection to my mom. Being raised by a grieving mother who felt unsupported and unloved by her husband. Going to college for a music degree at the University of the Pacific in Stockton, And she had always, when she met Margaret and Al as a young person, when she was going to college, and I remember her saying, I don't know when she started thinking that way, but as she got to know them, she said, if I was to get remarried, it would be somebody like Al. And as I was going through her stuff, I found all these cards, at the appropriate occasions and birthday cards, and they were expressing their love to each other, so it was very cute. So I just wanted you to hear that your dad knew how to take care of his woman. She went to St. Louis Music Institute, which was, it seems like it was quite a big deal. So she had made a scrapbook, so one of the scrapbooks is in your collection. And she would, so her, so also she endured when she was going to get married to our dad. The former wife came out, and with her mom, they tried to talk her out of it, out of marrying a much older man. And then finally she realized they were right and divorced him 5 years later. I didn't get that story until the 90th get-together. So who was here at our, when we did the 80th birthday party for her? Okay, and how about the 90th? Who was here? Yeah. I wasn't so sure it was wise to surprise a 90-year-old, so we didn't make it a surprise party. It actually created, so that period created a big rift in her mom and our mom's relationship for a long time until we were able to work through that. I don't know if is Armin here yet? No, he's coming, so he's our cousin. So I'll share that story later. She taught piano lessons to earn money to pay for to a two-story house. Any other jobs that she had that you? County clerk at that time? Okay. So two-story house, 3 kids, a husband who thought he was a leader and teacher, all in Hollister. Planning and executing her getaway at age 30 when our dad had a trip to San Francisco. She had the burden of accomplishing this on her own with 3 kids, age 5, 2, and 1. And when he came back to an empty house, there was great surprise and chagrin and his perpetual lament. So she went to court reporting school at that point in San Francisco, left us with her parents. So imagine that at in their 50s, and they consented to take care of us. So that, I don't know if I would do that. Would you do that? And not being able to see them except on weekends. So I remember that was difficult on me. On Sunday, I would always have butterflies in my stomach, knowing that she was going to be leaving. So when she moved to Stockton, when we moved to Stockton, she was doing the stenography job for the state of California, and then took on the side job of treasurer for the Stockton Central Adventist Church, staying up hours to get the books balanced to the penny. So, a penny you take, come on, that's good enough. But she would stay at it until she had it balanced exactly. To save money, she would use the blank inside of a used envelope. She would unstick it from the glue, and then that would be her monthly budget. So we all have memories of that. Having to have her youngest son take items from the grocery store cart and replace on the shelf since they didn't have enough money to pay for it. So humility was, she wasn't afraid of being humble. Finally, marrying a good man in her 50s, so Al Heinz, traveling and enjoying his company only for him to contract Lou Gehrig's disease, and then taking care of him as he gradually weakened over a 3-year period until his demise. She developed macular degeneration, which affected her ability to read music, but instead of lamenting that, obtained an enlarger and a printer, and then made the notes big. So it was, a song would be about, the cards were about this big, and this much that filled up the whole piano, so she didn't let that hold her back. In her 80s, she bought an 88 full-size Korg electronic keyboard, taking lessons, And then making the CDs. We have a CD, one of the CDs out on the table, so be sure and get one of the songs with the joyful sounds. And thank you very much. She organized the singing group, and again, so that to me was, instead of just saying, well, what do I know, and I don't know much, and I don't I don't have anybody to play for, she formed a singing group. So, and she was written up in the local newspaper as being, I don't remember exactly what the language was, but a wired grandmother, and in her 80s, and she had, she'd buy the latest iPhone, I think partly to compete with Ron and me, and just to be sure she had the latest and greatest, and we still have some of those things out there. So she was written up in the newspaper because of that, so I thought that was cool. She was a connector, keeping track of people's birthdays and anniversaries, taught herself how to make cards on the computer and sending them at the appropriate times. Going through her things, I found multiple address books full of entries, and then she finally figured out how to get it on her cell phone. And as I went through the cell phone, there was, so I don't know, is Luann here? So Luann had 6 entries. So that was her, that was one of our cousins. And so of course she didn't, get it all clear, but it was cool to see how she kept track of all these people that were in her life, relatives and friends. And you know who you are. She enjoyed traveling, taking the initiative to take each of her grandkids on a trip. So Lorraine was Disney cruise. Any others? So okay. So each of you, and then she took Rochelle and Michelle to London. Any others, Roche? Jared went to Russia. Oh, okay, and Russia. So she made it a point to take each of them, as well as with us, with the kids, so that was cool. And then she would continue to travel with friends, groups, and she had a scrapbook for each trip. So we have, did you count them? 30-ish scrapbooks of each and every trip that she took. And Ron's now the proud owner of each of those. So I'll let him deal with that. When I was asked to speak for a continuing medical education at Leone Meadows in August of 2019, she declared, "I'm coming too." She had a great time riding the maximum zip line, which I refused to ride, and also the giant swing. I met somebody that had done that with her. I don't know if she's here. Back there, okay. And she was the talk of all the young counselors, so she made instant lore among them, impressed with her can-do spirit. Terry Pfeiffer kept Grace's home in top-notch condition, invited Grace for a day on the Delta, taking her on a motorized, oh yeah. So let's see. So that's this is my, yep, oh, okay, very good. So I thought that was a cool picture, so thank you, Terry. She loved you and appreciated your arranging all the table and things in the house. She always had a table ready to entertain. I'd been working on her not driving for some years without her, but of course without her cooperation. So one conversation sticks in my mind. Me. So how will you know when you should stop driving? Her. Oh, I'll know. Me. What influence will others' assessment have on you? Her. Well, they don't know me as well as I know myself. Me. I'm scrutinizing every move you're making right now to see how well you're driving. So I wanted her to feel some pressure so any mistakes would be revealed. And then as I was cinching my seatbelt, I determined I wasn't going to react if there was an impending accident. So, because the only way she would learn is, if it happened. But, she got through that test. She looked forward to her first morning coffee with her cohorts, riding her 3-wheeled bicycle and meeting them at IHOP. So, Dot and I'm blanking, so yeah, so sorry. At age 95, to top matters off, without informing nor consulting anyone, so she didn't talk to my brother or me or Gail, went out and bought a brand new Prius in December of 2020, paying cash, and that was her response to our trying to get her to not drive. She didn't think in terms of impossibilities, but in possibilities. She didn't have a can't-do attitude. She had a can-do attitude. She didn't drink alcohol to escape her hardships, use drugs to assuage her sadness, have sex with various men in order to avoid her loneliness, blame her kids for their intransigence, which we deserved, get depressed because of her limitations, stay in bed because of her fatigue, and she went through a bout of mononucleosis, so she did have significant fatigue, nor give up because of any of those roadblocks. So I hate good examples like this. Takes away all my excuses. So normally at funerals, the custom is to only talk about good qualities. Well, I think it's okay to talk about our limitations and learning needs, and we needn't be squeamish about these things as adults, so here goes. She was defensive about her parenting skills when we attempted to provide wise input into how she could have done things better with us. And she had difficulty trusting our virtuous motives. So every kid who has kids eventually gets their turn on listening to such feedback while maintaining their serenity. So your time will come, Jarrett, Lorin, Rochelle. She didn't like conflict and would agree readily to some solution to avoid the conflict and then not be able to maintain her commitment to the solution. So I think a lot of us can resonate with that. Related to this was a reluctance to set limits, and as a result, felt like people would take advantage of her, and she would complain about this without realizing her role and take initiative to learn the necessary skills. So again, the things we don't learn younger, we have to pay the price older, and then at some point, it's difficult to learn. Finally, on this occasion, I have a confession to make. My mom made me promise never to tell this and to tuck it away safely in my heart. But I feel compelled to reveal the secret today. The secret is this: she always said to me that I was her favorite and made me promise to never breathe a word of this to my sister and brother, which I've been faithful to do until this day, and I'm sorry, Gail and Ron, but those are the facts, and I'm sticking to them. All right, great. I'll have to process this. So I wanted to spend a little time on talking about the last 3 months. As is our usual, we all gathered together for Thanksgiving at my brother's. And we noticed that with minimal walking, she seemed breathless with more swelling of her legs than usual. And she insisted she was taking her meds, but had just forgotten them this trip. So the physicians put their heads together, and we got her some more Lasix and gave it to them. And then when Mark and Lorin brought her home after Thanksgiving, it was pretty clear she hadn't been taking her meds. So we obtained help from her loving neighbors, Joan Moon and Jody Jeffries, who then checked on her daily, keeping her stable for after a couple of short hospitalizations for shortness of breath and edema. And then, after getting lost in December on our drive to the local chiropractor here in Lodi, we discovered her license had expired actually on her birthday on November 7. And so, with that evidence, we finally got her to agree to not drive anymore. So we figured that would be, the end of that. But then she insisted on keeping the keys and the car. We were already looking forward to getting some extra money by selling the car, and she said no. So she wanted the keys and the car. She enjoyed her Saturday night game night, being a formidable opponent, and I appreciate those that played with her and letting her beat. Or did you let her? And so then I think that was the week she had a game night at her house on Saturday night, and then after a week later she had to be admitted to the hospital again because of significant shortness of breath. She was there 2 weeks begrudgingly, telling me that she wanted to come home and was ready to die. And I said, well, it's not your time yet. Let's see first if we can stabilize things and get you feeling better. But after 2 weeks, it became clear that this was, so they tried to correct one thing and another thing would get out of whack. So I finally just said, okay, enough's enough. So we brought her home on hospice care. And finally, she recognized that she was home after telling her a few times. And this allowed, and then again, Joan and Judy graciously helped, and this really meant a lot to us. You guys, that she loves you and knew you, and that you guys cared about her. Yeah, go ahead, you do it. So, so I just want you to be sure that you know that from the family. So my mom was finally realized that she was home, and that was comforting to her. This allowed all of her close friends, the kids, the grandkids, to come. And one day I asked her, well, how are you feeling? And she said, tired. And so I said, well, your heart's having a hard time keeping up with you. And she reflected and said, is that how you die? And I said, yes, but I wanted her to know because I wanted her to know the reality of her situation. And I said, your grandkids want to talk to you. So this is Sunday. They're coming Thursday. So my daughters were able to come out, and Jared and Lorraine had already been by. And so then a lot of people were coming by, and it was very heartwarming to me to see that they weren't just being polite, but there was a connection that they had, a heartfelt connection. And that meant a lot to me. So after a busy day when people would come by, I think it was on Thursday, I said, well, so what are you thinking? And she hesitated and then said, I have good friends. Even throughout that, she was trying to get better. She didn't want to be a burden. She was trying to get out of bed to exercise and to still be, she didn't see this as a final end. She was trying to regain her strength. But then finally she quit eating, quit taking fluids, and it was exhausting to the caregivers, and so we finally put her at hospice house. And then her last awareness was on Friday night, and she told Ron she loved him. And so I had briefly gone down to Loma Linda, and then finally just came back. And by the time I got there on Sabbath at 4 o'clock, she was unresponsive. So that was a big shift for me to see her in that context. So I told her, and who knows what is heard or incorporated at this point, but I talked to her as if she could hear and understand. And I said, you're a fighter and you're a survivor. You've fought a good fight. You can rest now. And repeated it several times throughout the night. And so holding her hand and chronicling my thoughts, and I'll read you a few of those. And she breathed her last at 4:43 on Sunday morning. So thank you to all her friends for your support, all her family members for your love, to her caregivers for caring enough to be there till the end, and thank you, Grace, for gracing our life. So if you'll indulge me, I wrote several poems which kind of go through the progression of what I was feeling. So, and then I'll have a copy for you on the table as you go into the dining area, if you're interested. So the first one is A Mother's Hand. As she lay dying, I held her warm hand. I tried to convey to her heart what I understand. The hand that first held me as her loving child, as her loved child, the hand that comforted me while at me she smiled. The hand that changed me when I'd be a mess, the hand that soothed me when I would be stressed. The hand that guided me not now and then, but again and again and again and again. The hand that held me when I was sick or sad or in pain, or affected by sundry and varied and many of life's strain? The hand that held mine while crossing the street protected me, and I thought, that was so sweet. So before in my hand her hand becomes cold, let it not be said, my respect was untold. Suffice it to say that her hand means a lot, and many a lesson I have been taught. Time. There once was a mom with her son beside as her spirit was about to leave. He was glad for this time, for the moments to feel, and from her passing, a temporary reprieve. A lot has happened on which to reflect, as our tears would water a greater respect. It seems often in the case of the deceased that with time their fame has increased. It's too bad that with the passage of time our thoughts turn the simple to the sublime, when we could have done more to adore and shown our gratitude before. So let us learn from this before the final sleep, not to stay shallow, but to go deep. And our gratitude to those who, while still within reach, for from them we can learn and them teach. On tears. The difference is great between a good and a bad cry. As I reflect, let me see if I can clarify. One is bitter, filled with anger and regret at the things we didn't resolve but chose to neglect. The resentments and what we did not forgive, now we discover we're stuck with to live. The good cry is one filled with sadness yet love, with gratefulness and tenderness sent from above. With resolution and completeness, we can now shed our tears, feeling no regrets. We allow them to go without fears. On praying. When someone is sick, we feel a need to pray for their health, and to be healed, we plead. Yet, how do we know what lessons might be learned if only they'd suffered and compassion they'd earned? When someone is dying, there's sighing and crying and questions of God's mercy, and about questions of God's mercy, we just don't agree. Should we pray they'll die quicker as we see life's flame flicker? So what should we pray for? What ideas can we use as we rest on our knees and beg in the pews? I've decided, I don't know what words I should say, so I'll let you decide, Lord, what's the best way. I just want you, Lord, to be with her, and to your compassion I trustingly defer. On dying. Death's not an end, but just a deep sleep, where we don't dream or toss, nor utter a peep. We needn't be so afraid, as it will not last, and as we well know, this too shall pass. But what should instill us with unease is what's next, and that is who we'd rather be with or what we respect. If you squirm in God's presence and being unselfish, He certainly won't make you and will grant you your wish. And if being mean and self-centered is what you like best, then why wouldn't He grant you your dying request? But if with Satan you can't feel at ease, then God calls you by name and hands you His keys.
Isn't grace amazing? I clearly remember, I believe it was my first meeting with Grace. It was at the Placerville Church years ago. I felt an immediate connection because of my close connection with her son Ron and Janine. And in the foyer of the church, before church started, Grace and Lois Carpenter, remember that, Lois? She brought you as her friend to see her family and to go to church. And that's where my journey with Grace began. Little did I know at that time that I would become her pastor here. And as we launched into developing a small group culture here at this church, we started processing and building small groups. And Grace was quite persistent. I was trying to build my own small group very carefully and prayerfully. And she, through her connection with my wife doing teas here at this church, wanted to become a part of our small group. And she leaned on me pretty heavily to be included. I hesitated, not because I didn't like her or didn't feel like it would be a good fit, but I wanted to process that with the rest of the group, pray about it, and it wasn't long before she became a very important member of our small group, and she was amazing. As we planned our small group outings and get-togethers, we always had a meal, and she was quick to volunteer. I'll bring Martinelli's, and brought C's candy as well. So we enjoyed her very, very much. When I think about Grace, Lois too, but in particular Grace, my mind quickly went to Proverbs 31, and I've taken a few liberties, editorial liberties, to make it fit. Who can find a virtuous and capable wife and mother? She's more precious than rubies. Her husband and her children can trust her. And she will be greatly enrich their lives. She brings them good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She is like a merchant's ship bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her children. She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a garden. She is energetic and strong, a hard worker. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. Her hands are busy spinning thread, her fingers twisting fiber. She extends a helping hand to the poor and her arms to the needy. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes. And a little interpretation here, no fear. I didn't sense any hesitation or fear or ill feelings about her season in life, which has personally brought a lot of comfort. I was just talking to Dr. Barbara Julier in the foyer before this service, and we were talking about the reality of life here and now. And my own personal journey, the struggle with how can I get a grasp on the future reality as much as I have in the here and now. And that continues to be a struggle for me, perhaps for you as well. But I didn't sense any deep fear or regret with Grace as she faced the end of her life. And in her life, there was this constant optimism and positivity toward the next day, towards the forever future, in fact. Continuing on, she makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. She makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to the merchants. She is clothed with strength and dignity, and she laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. As I think about Grace, her life, her integrity, who she was, I cannot contribute it to anything that is evil. I can only contribute it, who she was, her character, to Jesus, her connection with God. My understanding of the gospel is that Jesus has the power and ability and willingness to live inside of us, to change us, to change our character, to make us more like God. Grace had characteristics that are representative of who God is. And I stand here and praise her and honor our Lord Jesus Christ for what he did in and through Grace in her life. One of my favorite songs currently is a adaptation in an arrangement of No One Ever Cared for Me Like Jesus. And the words go like this. The words inspire me, as Grace's life inspires me to be a testimony of the power of grace. In my heart, if my heart could tell a story, if my life would sing a song, if I have a testimony, if I have anything at all, no one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has led me all this way. And when I'm old and gray, and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known in you alone my joy was found. Oh, my joy, my joy. Let my children tell their children, let this be their memory, that all my treasure was in heaven, and you were everything to me. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. His faithful hand has led me all this way. And when I'm old and gray, and all my days are numbered on the earth, let it be known, in you alone my joy was found. My joy, my joy. I'm still in love. You're still enough for me. Still all I want. You're still my everything. No one ever cared for me like Jesus. Gracie points us to the forever future that God has for us. My favorite text, Jeremiah 29:11, says, I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Grace is amazing.
How's everybody doing? Thank you for being here. Some of you drove a long way, some of you flew even further, and we just really, really appreciate you and our celebration of my mother's life. I was an accident, by the way. Mistake. My mother made a few mistakes early in life, but if she didn't, we wouldn't be here. So my mother said, it's the best mistake I ever made. Oh, but you guys, you weren't mistakes, I was. So a few memories. My first memory, and Mickey's alluded to some of this, is, don't go to San Francisco, Mommy, don't go to San Francisco. That was my first memory at 3 years old when she was having to go back on Sunday night. So I'll still remember that. That was the same thing as happening to me. So, but she made a decision. She said she knew what she had to do, and she did it. And all through her life, she knew what she had to do, and she did it. And she planned it to, she really planned it, okay? So, and she taught us well. I earned 50 cents when I was 5 years old. I'll never forget this. And she said, okay. She said, we're going to figure out how to donate, tithe is 50 cents. So in my 5-year-old mind, I had it was a 50-cent piece. I couldn't figure out how to tithe a 50-cent piece. So I learned what change was at 5 years old. And that taught me and brainwashed me into feeling guilty about giving up hard-earned money. And giving is a very important thing that she taught us. It's a piece of who you are, and it's something that you hold on to. And being able to give it away does something to you that God knew, and our mother taught us that. She was never legalistic, and that I really, really appreciate that. She never, people our age, they're beat into them that you can't go. Well, she did tell us she was uncomfortable for us to go swimming, but we couldn't get our swimming suit wet. We could go right up to above the knee to wear our swimming suit in. So she did kind of instill that into us, but she really wasn't very legalistic much after that. And I think that for me, that was very powerful because there was nothing I was running away from, whereas a lot of my classmates and people my age, they were raised in a pretty legalistic environment. And the reason she was more liberal in that way is that her parents were very legalistic. And that's what got her, into a little bit of rebelliousness when she was 18 and 19 years old. So, what's that? Okay. So she really, so a few things that she insisted on was that we go to church every Sabbath. I mean, it was not, Gail would say, oh, do we have to go to church? Yes. And, do we have to go to can't we go to the local elementary school? No. So we went to the Stockton Elementary School. And again, she paid for everything, even though other people that made more were on assistance. We never went on assistance. We earned extra money. Gail and I made apricot pies and sold them for $1 down the street. And so anyway, so that was very important. And it's the culture. We have a culture as the Seventh-day Adventist culture, which is very, very powerful. And I don't regret that at all. My people say I'm naive, and I was raised very, very sheltered, and I'm kind of proud of it. So, and the thing that Mickey talked about is that she always wanted to do the right thing. In fact, almost to a fault. So she cared a lot about what other people thought about her, and I think that was a weakness. And I go, Mother, who cares about what they think of you? It doesn't matter. But she always wanted to do the right thing. I think she saw her brother being spanked by my grandmother, and she did not want to do that. So that influenced her a lot. A couple other stories is that I was the one that I went shopping with her at the grocery store, and she had her budget on the back of a used envelope, like Mickey said, and she was watching the cash register go, and she was holding her breath, and the more they got to the end, she was tensing up, and when it got to the end, she looked at me, I looked at her, and I knew what I had to do. I took the cheese back. So we were raised, and I did that more often than not, we were raised on non-fat powdered milk, awful, margarine, awful. And then I didn't know what milk was, and regular milk was until I graduated from dental school. So, and then I never had margarine since. So, and then I found out that butter was actually better for you than margarine. Okay. So, and I was lacking fatherly figures, and so we latched on to Dr. Hagen, who's a dentist, and his red socks in church, in the Stockton Central Church. And that was always interesting. And then our Pathfinder leader, Mr. Kortner, was one of our fatherly figures. And so my mother put us in these situations where we could, she really couldn't take us camping. She didn't, we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. We had good friends that took us boating. Sid Lloyds took us boating, and we went camping with Pathfinders. And so what's that? Yeah, Harlan Myers took us boating, right? And yeah, so we had good friends that took us. So we really didn't feel a lack for a lot of things. So my mother, we sold peanuts during money at Pathfinders, and of course, the more we sold, the more, the sleeping bags we got, pocket knives, canteens, and so, we really checked that out. And I want to tell you that I was Mr. Peanut 4 years in a row. We would sell peanuts after school at the Pathfinders, and then in the evening for our regular Pathfinder meeting, we'd sell peanuts, and then at 10 o'clock we got home, and I said, "Okay, Mother, let's go." And so she was just exhausted, and she said, "Okay." So we hit 4 bowling alleys from 10 to 11:30, and I sold 2 more cases that way. So, and then my mother really embarrassed my sister and I, Gail and I, because and we have that quote in the program. She would be going to the gas station to fill up with gas, and she would look at the attendant. She says, "You look hungry." And Gail and I were just so embarrassed that we crawled to the back, and we got as low as we can in the back, off the seat and into the floorboards, to just try to hide as she was trying to sell peanuts to the gas station attendant. And my mother was, complained, and she was tired when she got mononucleosis when we were teenagers. So the 3 kids would bet to see whether Mother would cry that night when she came home from work. So we go, "I won." So it was bad. And then we finally said, "Okay, Mother, you need to trust us." I says, we'll do all the cleaning, we'll do all the cooking, we'll all do the grocery shopping, and you're going to pay us $17 a month. So Gail and I did that, and we talked her into saying, because she was stressed, so we wanted to help out. So we said, "Okay, we're going to do it." And I think we did that for a while, right? She paid us $17 a month. She would say, and then she promised us to take us out to eat. And the deal was, she was going to take us out to eat once a month. And this was at Smorgy Boys for $1. And then after a month rolled around, we sat her down and go, "Mother, you haven't taken us out. It's been a month and it's been 5 weeks now." So she finally did that. She always believed in quality. So I remember saving. We didn't do any trips, whatever. And she got a refrigerator in the 60s with 24 copper coils. I think that refrigerator is still running. And then the promise was, we can go to New York. It was always a New York road trip. And let's fix up the backyard instead of the road trip. Okay. And it was always something, so we never did go on that road trip. And we bugged her for many years after that, that we never got to go to New York. So anyway, she didn't let me do a couple things. She wouldn't let me work at McDonald's in Stockton. Remember when McDonald's opened up there? I was making the French fries, and I just wanted to work there so bad. She wouldn't let me do that. She wouldn't let me buy a bigger motorcycle when I was 16. Anyway, so she was always a hard worker. She was always a planner all throughout her life, and that's really instilled me. So I, really appreciate my mother, and I miss her.
There's a couple stories I'd never heard before there. That was good. I'm Ron's son, Jarrett, so I'm known for saying things I probably shouldn't, so I'll probably have a few of those in here. But so my first memory, Grandma, she lived at Rivergate, right? Rivergate was their older house. Okay. So there was a couple times where I'd be privileged to go and hang out with Grandma for the weekend, and that was just me and Grandma, so it was great. She'd swim there. She always had her swim thing. She'd always swim every day. I remember going to Thai food and having a fried banana for the first time. That was really cool. I'd never had one of those before. One of those times, I think it was a little bit older, but she had her Prius, and we were at this stoplight, and I don't know if some teenage punk was looking at her or something, but she drag raced this guy with me in the front seat with her Prius, and she beat the guy. And then they pulled up in front of us, cut us off, and flipped us off. And I was like, whoa. And she was like, I won. So that was awesome. So Grandma was always an early adopter, so she would introduce me, not my parents, I'm pretty sure, but she introduced me to Nintendo, the original Nintendo, and I think she got it just to impress me. And she played it, and then this was like, in the 80s, late 80s or whatever, so I immediately got good at that and Duck Hunt, and that was what we did with Grandma. We played Mario and Duck Hunt. It was like, my grandma is way cooler than your grandma. So, soccer camp, so I was a teenager, I would go, and they had a soccer camp here in Lodi. Actually, it was like right across the street here in this field here, and I played. It was like one of the coolest weeks ever. I would get to play soccer and stay at Grandma's, and we'd always have feta cheese on cream of wheat, which was way weird, but I actually started to like it. So if you never have try feta cheese on your oatmeal or cream of wheat, you might be surprised. She'd make me this grilled cheese with a very specific type of cheese, and I cannot remember. Do you guys remember what the kind? Halloumi? I just remember that was she only made it, and it was really good. Yeah. Anyway, whatever, we can argue about that later. But so movies with Grandma, she would always make a point of it to spend time with me individually, which always made me feel special. So we'd go once a year, she would take me to a movie, and I could pick, and it would be James Bond or some ridiculous thing like that. Typing class, so she taught typing at our little Adventist elementary school, so she was the typing teacher, and she was, had to be right, and some kids were crying because she was like, oh, gotta be right, and I was like, oh, okay, better get this right. Had to put my finger, no, that's the fourth finger, not the third finger, so that was fun. Let's see here. Piano recitals growing up, she was always very supportive in that. Papa Pavlo's, the flaming cheese, that was a big deal for our family. Every week, every birthday we'd go there, and the Nagasaki, I think it's called, the Oppa and the flaming cheese, that was always fun. Let's see here. So this is when I was a teenager-ish, preteen. She was crazy. She'd always be the email, and this was pre-social media, but staying up till I'd get an email from midnight, 1 a.m. from Grandma, and I'm like, what the heck, Grandma? What are you doing up? This is teenage behavior. And then we went. We went on. So my trip, I guess, was we went on a Russian cruise as a family. So we did a cruise from St. Petersburg to Moscow, and it was crazy. It's the third world cruise. I don't know if you've ever been something like that, but they had one memory that sticks in my mind is they served you cow tongue as an appetizer. So there is a plate with a straight up tongue this big, bam, just they and hacked it off and stuck it on the plate. And so my dad's a dentist and said, I look at those all day. I cannot eat that. And Grandma tried it, cut it up and ate it, and my mom about croaked. And we were all and she was and swallowed it, and we were whoa. I have not tried cow tongue. All right, so getting older now, so what sticks, so emails, Facebook. Grandma got on Facebook and was Facebooking me all the time, grandchild stalking, you could call it. Always checking us out, Facebook messaging us, and I was like, dude, what grandma Facebooks? This is great. 80-something-year-old Facebooking, all the time, too. She'd have, I want to thank this community, English Oaks community, because I think this community and the setup they have with all the residences here I'm sure that prolonged her life by probably a decade at least, because most people, they get old, they get less active, and their brain starts to go. But when you are competing with your neighbors, betting the full 401k on their card games, you're going to be a little more sharp. So we called it, the grandkids will call it the geezer get-togethers, so no offense. And I'd go and say, hey, Grandma, did you have to like break up a fight or, anyone throw their insure at each other or anything like that? So I was always making fun of you guys behind your back. So anyway, so I apologize, and she loved it. Yeah. So as she was getting older, she was always an early adopter, like we talked about. So her big old Mac computers out there, iPads out there. And one thing I noted specifically was, so she had the, I've fallen, I can't get up button, around her neck. So she traded that in for an Apple Watch and told me the payment's the same. I said, Grandma, if you fall and can't get up, what are you actually going to do? She's like, I'll just tell Siri. And so I remember her memory was slowly getting a little worse, and so I always say, okay, Grandma, if you hold this button down for 5 seconds, it'll call the emergency. She's like, okay, and she would forget, anyway. So I was going to be really upset at her if she was like dead in the corner and couldn't get up because she had her iWatch, her Apple Watch. All right, so she was always very loving, supporting the great-grandchildren. She was always, every Christmas, every holiday, she was always made sure to be there and support the great-grandkids. Always present at everything that was a big deal, that was important. And one memory that I will specifically say, probably get in trouble for it, was we watched as a family, You Don't Mess with the Zohan. Who knows this movie? It's an Adam Sandler movie. It is very inappropriate and probably offend half this room. But Erin, when we got done saying it, she was like, just because you get old doesn't mean you lose your sex drive. This was in her late 80s. And with that, I will adjourn.
I can't. I hate talking after Jared. It's the worst. So I'm Lorraine. I'm Jared's sister, sadly. So yeah, a lot of the same memories, but grew up calling her Grandma, which got shortened to Graham or Graham Cracker, I would call her, which kind of got shortened to just Cracker, which I'm not sure if that's the best, but she loved it. In her email, she would sign off as Cracker. She was really involved with everything that we did. She would come out to Sutter Hill up by Jackson, and she edited the whole yearbook. She would do typing with us. We would squeeze her in between Oregon Trail. It was really fun. But, and then, yeah, we would spend weeks with her, and she got to take each of us on a trip, each grandkid, which is great. We got to Russia, Spain. I was watching all the older grandchildren go to all of these cool places, and I was like 9. I'm like, Grandma, we got to go somewhere, you're getting too old, so you're not going to enjoy it, so we got to go now. So that's how I got the Disney cruise. But she had a lot in her left, though. We could have gone worldwide. But yeah, really generous. She was always really good with her finances, but she was so generous, with everything. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows she would be the first one to donate to anybody or make sure that if she owed something, she would for sure pay it and some, which was really, an amazing attribute for us to see as a good role model. So I think that we try to do that as well. Yeah, we've been really lucky to have our son, Miles. He is just a year, and she would always check in and how's motherhood treating you? And I'm like, it's rough, Grandma. I don't know how you did it. 3 times, crazy. But just really admirable, always remembered everything. So just really appreciate her always checking in. In college, she would drive up to PUC, and that was the only way I could afford going to the restaurants. She would take me out Sabbath afternoon, and didn't realize how much of a commitment that was, until later looking back. She would, drop of a hat, she'd be there. Just to take me out to lunch and then drive all the way back. She always stayed sharp with her competitive nature, with the geezer get-togethers, and then words with friends. I think she cheated often just to win, but she's like, the resources are out there. I don't know why you're not using them. Yeah, it was really fun to see her. I always kind of knew her growing up as a little bit of a people pleaser, right? Like wanting to make sure everybody was happy. But later it was just really fun to see her be like, I deserve this. I will get this extra dessert. I will eat what I want. And she became really into Fritos. So it was really fun seeing her even in the last few weeks. She's like, I want my Fritos. And we're like, you got it, Grandma. You can have them. So just really fun and, really good example. Love that she was with it for so long and got to be fortunate enough to have her close by. But yeah, thank you so much for being here and appreciate all of you.
I think most of you know me. My name is Terry Pfeiffer. I'd like to say what a privilege it is to be able to say something about my sweet Gracie this morning. About 12 years ago, a mutual friend, Shirley Burns, introduced me to Gracie. She needed some help packing up and cleaning out her stuff at Rivergate, so from that time to the time when she passed, we became very dear friends, and I continued to work for her right up until she passed away. After a time and we got to know each other, she learned a little bit about me, and she invited me to join Joyful Sounds, her singing group, which she worked tirelessly, hours, with a gentleman by the name of Richard Hardy, creating the accompaniment tracks to the music that we sang to. Her musical talent and her understanding of how music was written always amazed me. And up until December of last year, she would, if I asked her to, she would entertain me on the piano while I was cleaning her house. She really enjoyed doing that, and she would play some of her favorites. One was Romance and the other Claire de Lune. And even though her eyesight was fading, she'd, like Mickey said, figured out a way to make the music big enough to see, and it was astounding. I know these songs had 9, 10, 11 pages. So these pieces of board with the music on it, they were in a row, and she had a great system where she would play, and then pretty soon they'd be on the floor, and the next one would be in front of her. It was quite a process. Anyway, at the end of every workday, she would always say to me, "I'm ready for my giggles," which meant that she was eager to see the decorating changes that I had made in her house, especially the dining room table. She was always ready to entertain her best with her best and prettiest dishes. I'm not sure, but I think I was told there was still 9 or 10 casseroles in her little freezer because she was always ready to have people for lunch or dinner. Her hospitality knew no end. This is one of my favorite memories of Gracie. Would you believe at 91, and I know this has already been mentioned, that my husband and I invited her to go jet skiing one day on the river. She did not hesitate for a second. She was eager to go, and I knew she loved the water. She was a good swimmer, a really good swimmer, more underwater than on top of the water, which, messed up her hair. But anyway, she loved to go swimming. So after a lot of sunscreen, got a vest that fit her really well, her hat, her sunglasses, Gracie and I on one jet ski, my husband Lance on the other. We took off for a day on the Delta, and she was so excited. I said, "Now, Gracie, you want me to go slow? Because I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to be scared." Well, you know what she said, right? Let's go fast. So we did. She hung on to me, and we had a great day. She had a cute little bathing suit on, and she just, it was just a wonderful day. As Pastor Roy mentioned, Gracie became part of our small group in 2015, and she was always eager to read, even though she couldn't see that great, but she would read the Bible text, and sometimes she'd have some comments to make about it, and would offer up sweet prayers. And again, she would always bring a pie and Martinelli's, because we did have dinner together at every small group meeting. As the years passed and her eyesight faded, sometimes in winter, she didn't drive in the evenings. So with the help of Wally or Rosalia or Ed and Kelly, they would always see to it that she got to our small group meetings. She just never missed. Anyway, I could go on and on, but this is just a glimpse of some of my special memories. She was unique, she was wonderful, and I will really miss her.
We'd like you to sing along with us. If you'll open your hymnal to number 632. Until then, number 632, and sing along with us.
want to encourage people to fill out the memory cards while they're working on that. And it'd be awesome to see your guys' memories we have of her. And then also, I spent quite a bit of time on this presentation that we're going to show at the T. It's a 32-minute video, so I apologize it's so long, but I could not make it any shorter, I feel like, with her long life. So we are going to show that at the T. So I would encourage you to stay for that and enjoy some food. All right, that's all I got.
It was beautiful. Did you enjoy the piano solo? We'll get it going. Thank you, guys. Sorry for that. Yeah, so what Jarrett said is we don't, in lieu of a book, if everyone can take the card, and even if you don't want to say anything or need to say anything, just put your name and maybe your contact information, and then take it to the tea. So we're inviting you to a very, very special lunch tea put on by Susan Hager and her crew, and you're going to enjoy this very, very much. So she's retired, but she came out of retirement to do this because my mother and Susan did teas 8 at a time. It alternated between my mother's house and Susan's house, and their goal was to have all the ladies of the church be involved, and they did it. I told Susan, what, 10 times? And she goes, oh no, more than that. So this was something that they did. My mother, when we were growing up, she invited 14 people over, remember? Okay, every single Sabbath. And my sister and I knew what to do. We made bean salad, and we knew how to make bean salad that fast. And we pulled the casseroles out of the freezer, and we did that growing up. She's been doing that for 60 years. So please fill this out so that we know you're here. Last thing I want to say is that my mother always loved us. We always knew that mother loved us. When we were, no matter what age we were, even as we struggled with adult issues and financial issues, my mother said, I'm praying for you, and that meant really a lot to me. I didn't realize how much it actually meant to me until she told me that, and I started crying. But so a lot of, I think there's, I don't know how many kids can say that we always felt loved by our mother. So anyway, let's close with prayer. Dear Jesus and God, we come together today to commemorate and celebrate our mother and our dear friend Grace Bonaparty and Heinz Ask. You've created us all with a purpose, and a special purpose. You created us all unique and very specially with my mother. Forgive us for not connecting with you, who gives us peace. Forgive us for not connecting with each other and family like we should. And so we can better enhance our lives by connecting and share our joys. And Lord, we ask you to reconnect us with our purposes in life. We ask you to reconnect us with our family, with our friends in a meaningful way. We ask that you remember the example of my mother as she did this so well. We thank you for each person here today and sharing their lives with my mother, for blessing her for so long as family and friends, close and far away. And we thank you for causing all things to work together as a plan for good for those who love you, for those who are called according to his purposes and plans. We see this promise fulfilled with my mother. And may we all, Lord, say like my mother Grace, I have fought a good fight and have completed my course. I have kept the faith. The victory wreath is waiting for me, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give to me when you come back. And not only to me, but to all those who have loved you and look forward to seeing you. And Lord, may the Lord bless you and protect you. May the Lord smile on you and be gracious to you. May the Lord show you his favor and give you peace. Amen. Thank you for coming. We're going to go over to pick a table, and then we're going to watch the video as the ladies can bring the food out. So no touching the food, don't touchy until it's all laid out, okay? So they're still in the process, and we're going to watch the video.